is business. My name is Simba Elijah Charles Kiage. You are most certainly still watching Metropole Television. All right. Now, for the first part of this year, we've been really covering the effects of COVID-19 in different sectors of the economy. And one of those sectors, therefore, that have been on a key focus even before COVID-19 was the real estate sector in the country. Talks around affordable housing, which have now gone a bit cold because the government has focused its powers to fight in the COVID-19 pandemic in the country, are still right, though, is that we have to talk about how this sector is trying to refigure itself within the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, talks around this have been landlords being put on the spot for not waiving rents. There have been also areas around land payments, that is in terms of land rates payments. There have also been talks around business permits payments. Therefore, whether you like it or not, each industry, each sector is feeling the heat of the COVID-19 pandemic. And therefore, just to understand how members of the real estate sector are also getting affected this morning, we do have Mr. Peter K. Wairege. I'd like to continue his title. All right, he's a business coach, he's an executive board member at KIPRA, that is KPRA, all right, Professional Realtors Association. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
All right, I know we have a lot of conversations now on exactly how to understand the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic in the real estate sector in the country, but I would like to begin on that note. What have been the biggest concerns of the associations, of the association members as we try to fight the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, thank you for inviting me. Interestingly, real estate contributes about 75% of global wealth. And it's interesting that beside tourism and travel, real estate is number 3 in terms of contribution to the economy. And as you already know, this COVID pandemic is affected real estate transactions, both directly and indirectly. Yes. So in terms of the association impact, Kenya is a growing economy. It's what's called developing economies. It's not a mature economy. So that the idea of home ownership and the idea of, in terms of financing for real estate has been a challenge already. So already between 2016 and now, the market has been declining. Not that there was not positive gains in real estate, but there have been some challenges in terms of growing this market.
Yes.
This affordable housing, part of the Agenda 4, is one of the initiatives. And now it's a little bit on the back burner, but I think once we get this pandemic under control, I think we'll go back to those discussions in terms of how do we continue to provide incentives for this affordable housing. Because as I mentioned to you earlier, before our interview, is a house is not only a shelter, it's not only an economic livelihood, yes, but it's also a shelter. It's a necessity.
Yes.
So I think we need to get to a point where owning a home is not only a reality, but it's something that is possible.
Yes.
And to do that, we must grow our economies, we must provide incentive, we must create proper financing structures, and the government will play a big role.
Yes.
In the private sector, like our association, like KPRA, we'll continue to have those discussions with our partners, with the lenders, international community, once this pandemic is under control. But we are in uncharted territory, so these challenges are big. And I think in some cases we maybe have to wait and see. But as we are waiting and seeing, we need to start now adopting other technologies in terms of, even for property sales, which is now on a hold, how can we start viewing properties online? Home shows. I know there's an organization called Property Show in Kenya. If you go in the US and UK, you can view a property virtually.
Yes.
So I think those are some of the new strategies we need to look at so that the market is not completely broken.
Yes.
So, but we are in challenging times. I think as we continue to discuss some of this matter, we'll see how do we empower and how do we create new strategies so that people in real estate can still continue to be in business.
Pretty much, isn't it? It's interesting you be talking about how you are as a sector in challenging times.
Yes.
But I take you back to the way we started the year. Real estate was on the spot again by underperforming. Do you find yourself in the worst case scenario now? Is that as you're trying to figure yourselves and trying to understand exactly what is causing the underperformance that we've seen at the start of this year,
yes,
COVID-19 comes in.
Yes.
Are you now on a wait and see, or you're trying to come up with strategies that are going to make you navigate these trying times?
I think it's a good question. I think you're correct that we were having some challenges already.
Yes.
And I don't want to say that the prospect is grim, but if already we were having some challenges, especially in the commercial arena, there was an oversupply of commercial rental space. The residential, on the other hand, we have an undersupply.
Yes.
There is more demand on low to middle housing, which we are calling affordable housing, than there is for the high end. The high end property prices have stayed very, very low, and their market now is stable and low. But on the lower end, their market is still, the demand is high. Remember, we were told when we started this affordable housing Agenda 4 that the demand, the deficit was 2.5 million, growing at 200,000 houses per year. So we can say now, we can expect now from 2018 when we started this initiative, and now we're in 2020, that deficit might be close to now 3 million deficit in low affordable housing.
Yes.
So now, how do we go from here? I think the pandemic has added a new equation, a new challenge. Already the market was suffering from lack of liquidity and lack of this financing and movement in affordable housing.
Yes.
So now, as we wait and see, I think we need to start rethinking how do we energize and provide the necessary resources so that we can achieve this affordable housing.
Yes.
If we look at what other nations have done, US and UK, the government provided subsidies, guarantees. In the US, they have FHA and VA. VA, if you work for the government, you don't have to put any down payment. Your loan is 100% guaranteed by the government. If you are somebody that falls under the affordable low income, then you get FHA, which is insured.
Yes.
So we may need to be more creative so that we are able to provide resources for people who like to own a home than rent. As a matter of fact, when I started talking to you earlier, we talked about if you can afford rent, 20,000, 25,000, that
yes.
you can afford to own a home.
Yes.
So that we need to translate the renters to homeowners.
Yes.
And I think that's the discussion we need to have. How do we do that?
Yes.
And there are many aspects of how to do that.
All right, but just so that we scrap the service really on exactly what is to happen right now, yes. You are actually also blamed as a sector for not understanding the market in which you're actually playing in, yes. Which led to last year we saw an oversupply of office spaces, correct. Which actually dealt a huge blow to the real estate sector correct. As well.
Correct.
So what is the shift going to happen? Because after COVID-19, that these lessons that companies are drawing, we don't need more space, we can work from home.
Yes.
Is that going to be the shift? And how are you going to get into this, let's say, residential space that you need to get into because of the undersupply?
Well, you raised a very good question. And I think in anything, in any sector, information and knowledge,
yes.
They say knowledge is power. I think now that we are realizing that we have not achieved what milestone we need to achieve in affordable housing, and we ask ourselves a question, why? It's what I mentioned to you earlier. The structures, we lack structures.
Yes.
The number of registered estate agents in this country is below 400. The number of people doing real estate is about 50 to 60,000. So yes. You can see that a larger percentage of people that are in sales and marketing are almost what you'll call informal sector, not properly structured. So I think what we need to do is encourage those that are in the industry to raise up their bar. That's what KPR is trying to do through training, yes, through networking, and also through collaborations. If you look at the international community, how they have done this affordable housing, they've done a good job. A great example is Singapore. Yes. Singapore. And also other countries like UK, in terms of the affordable housing initiatives. They have already made a lot of strides. So in Kenya, as a growing economy, where we know the demand is there for affordable housing, then we need to come with things that work. I think the government's role is to create the environment and legislative initiative. The private sector is to provide the resources, the training, and access. Yes. And the other thing I want to add from this discussion is because of this pandemic, there will be a hit on credit because a lot of people may not be able to pay the existing debt they have. So this credit issue, creditworthiness, which allows you to afford financing, is going to also be a problem. Yes. So we may need to look all the way from the Central Bank of Kenya to the Ministry of Finance. Yes. How do we help people within this time? The next pay maybe the second and third quarter, they put a moratorium on payments. Yes. And so that it doesn't affect the individual's credit. And even the developers who are finances, how, if they are not actually selling properties and they are not working on full force capacity, how do they also service their debt? So we have some challenges ahead of us. And I think the discussion you have created now is, how do we go? We are already having some difficulties. We are now in uncharted territory.
I see.
How do we navigate? So we're going to need new strategies
yes.
To deal with this.
But I want to point you to just what you've mentioned here, is that the biggest blame again for the underperformance of the real estate sector as we cleared 2019 was liquidity issues.
Correct.
I mean, the cap on interest rates was hugely blamed.
Correct.
For the lack of liquidity in the market, therefore, just to enable the real estate sector to perform. Do you feel that now, since we're talking about a CBR of just 7% and the fears that might go lower, do you think that's going to enable you recover post-COVID-19? Or it's going to be other factors which I want you to share to me this morning, Mr. Warwick?
We need other factors. You know, Kenya, we don't live in a vacuum. I think we live in a global, in a global village now.
Yes.
So that I think we are going to need other initiatives, because if it's true that there is not enough liquidity, if it's true that there is not enough access to credit, then we may have to create an environment where we incentivize others, institutions, to invest in this real estate market.
Yes.
What I know for sure is that there's not enough money, there's not enough financing, and there's also not enough property in terms of the level of the affordability. Because a property is affordability. If I sell you a property for 4 million or 3 million, but you cannot afford a payment of, let's say, 150,000, and your affordability level is 50,000, those are the properties we need to deliver. In the prices between rentals between 20, 30, 40, and 50,000.
Yes.
That's the affordable range. The majority of Kenyans who are working in offices make anywhere between, say, 80,000 to 150,000. And they can only the payment ratio is 30% of your gross income. So 30% of your salary, therefore, if you're making 100,000, is 30,000. Those are the property we need to deliver. That's the affordable range, if not lower than that.
Yes. And
then when you go away out of this, the suburban, we must create even property that is lower below 1 million. And that property, then the mortgage financing for that, if you get long-term financing, can be anywhere, say, between 10 and 15,000. That's what we need.
Yes. Is it not difficult, therefore, for us to talk about those margins, Mr. Barigi, this morning, when in reality, I want to point you out to exactly what even PS here has done so far. We did get the announcement that if you're into affordable housing units, you're going to get a waiver on VAT on the affordable housing building materials. You're also going to get a waiver on VAT on corporate tax as well, which has been produced as well. Is that enough, therefore, to reduce these prices? Because what we do know now is that the standard around 3 million, and we're talking about 1 million. Mr. Waregi, what's going to help us bring it down? Has the government done enough?
The biggest challenge in affordable housing is the cost of land.
Yes.
And then the cost of construction. Because this brick and mortar, if you look at most countries who have achieved the affordable housing, they don't always go with brick and mortar. They use innovative construction. Panel, the new technologies.
Yes.
So now, beside the technology, beside the access to financing, we need to also look at a layout of a house. What is an affordable house? If you have a family of 2, how many bedrooms do they need? So if you go to South Africa, the one that they call the Mandela unit, it was only 3 rooms, sitting room, 1 bedroom, another bedroom. And the cost was below 1 million. And the World Bank also give them some incentives for free solar.
Yes.
So for us to achieve that in Kenya, we need not only for the cost of land to be very low, the cost of construction to be low, but other incentives. For example, the one I just mentioned to you, World Bank was giving incentive for free solar.
Yes.
So for people who are buying affordable housing, you are given free solar, you are given free amenities and so forth. So we need incentives, we need subsidies, we need the government to issue some guarantees, and so that the access is not as difficult. So if the demand is there and people are looking for these homes, let's find a way to put people in homes.
Yes, interesting you should mention something that everybody knows in Kenya, is that the cost of land is always
prohibitive. It's over 50%.
It's over 50%, isn't it?
Correct.
So what is it we're going to make it come down, when in reality everybody's telling you the most surest way to invest your money, go buy land, sit for 1 year. After that, it's 50% the value that it was.
Now, to answer that question also, what the government has realized is that we may have to go up. So that if we are using a 1 acre land and you're able to do, say, 50 units, then the cost of land is suppressed and is lower.
Yes.
But for the initial phase, we need land that is contributed by government or the developers or the international community. So for us to achieve this number, we are talking about almost a deficit of 3 million houses.
Yes.
So for us to get there, let's tackle the issue of the land first and remove that. And then the cost of construction. So the only cost left really is the question of finishes. The finishes. And I'm suggesting we don't need larger homes, we need a smaller. A one-bedroom house will be more than sufficient for first-time home buyer.
Yes.
The other thing that KPRI is doing, we need to have a training with what is a first-time home buyer and what are the things you need to know to become a homeowner, to be able to afford a house, to service it. So even in terms of information, I can tell you, it's still lacking.
Yeah.
Even this affordable housing with the Big Four agenda, if you go to many countries and ask them, how do I access this affordable housing? They don't have the information. So you can see already there's some gap. So let's do a better job.
Yes,
and I think
yes.
KPRI is coming to subsidize that, working with the government and
Yes.
other private sectors and other associations, including communities and working with counties. The governors should be the people spearheading this affordable housing initiative.
Yes.
And the governors are silent. They're silent. In any case, now that we are under this pandemic, let's start having a discussion in terms of how do we unlock this affordable housing.
Yes.
And if we tackle the issue of land, because government has land available. It's not that we don't have land in Kenya.
There is land available. There is
It is
land available.
So let's make it a
Yes.
priority.
Yes.
Let's make owning a home part of the Kenyan dream.
Yes.
And to do that, then they work both within the government and the private sector and come up with strategies, the things that work. And when we say affordable, let the property be between $1 million to 2 million.
Yes.
3 and 4 million for many low income is not
that
affordable.
steps out.
It's
And
not
that-
affordable.
That's where the majority of
Exactly.
Kenyans are,
Exactly.
isn't it? When you look at mortgage versus ownership in
Yes.
the country. All right, let's therefore look at another area there for Mr. Waregi this morning. Now, we're still within this COVID-19 pandemic, and everybody's talking about how are we going to look after the COVID-19 pandemic. So what are your members within your association really concentrated on right now as we try and figure our economy during this COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, some of the folks that I've talked to,
Yes.
some of our members, their fears are that the real estate will be hit very hard. And the fact that things will change. Living post-COVID-19, you'll find that with the social distance, there'll be some new regulations and changes in the workplace.
Yes.
Until we find a vaccine that can bring us back to where we were, say about 6 months ago. So we now need to make an assumption that we'll be operating in a different world. The sector will have to adopt some of the new measures of how to do business. In real estate, to create a level playing field, I think we need to start doing more consumer advocacy. We need to do more training. We need to have new changes in the way we market property. I mentioned to you one of the ideas we have is do property show, what is called an open house.
Yes.
Virtually. So that will need to happen. Also, we need to improve our regulation so that, for example, yesterday I read in the paper, some of the people have signed agreement on these gated communities and properties are not delivered on time. The contract favors the developer. The contracts need to favor the buyer, the consumer. So we also need to look at that. What are type of construction agreements that are there? So for our members, we do what is called business power networking,
yes,
where we meet and discuss what challenges they are faced and what we can do to improve that. We'll continue with those power networking, both virtually and both when the market reopens.
Yes.
But we still need to have this discussion in terms of what we need to make, because real estate contributes to about 75% of the global wealth. Is an area where we know there's a lot of potential.
Yes.
In the last 10 years, most returns have come from real estate, 24% in real estate. So what we are saying, looking on the positive side, there are many things we can do right that will continue to have real estate play a big role in our economic growth.
Yes.
So let's do that through having the association, working with the government, and the government should create more incentives,
yes,
more incentive, and also more subsidy and guarantees so that people who want to buy a home for about $1 million or $2 million can afford a home.
It's good a thing that you've mentioned how the association should work with the government as well. Do you think, therefore, Mr. White, on a personal level, do you think that the government has done enough for entities like your association and other private real estate developers within the country just to help them achieve the Big Four agenda under affordable housing?
Unfortunately, I'm allowed to say no. But in any case, if the government leaders are watching, KPRI is open to working with the government to make this a reality.
Yes.
I think it's the government's priority. The home ownership is very important because it's part of the three pillars, the economic, social, it's part of it. So I think the government wants to help people own homes and drive this real estate market to in a positive conclusion. So what I would have to say that I am open. Our association members are open in having not only a dialogue, but working in partnership with the government to make this home ownership a reality. And I think without COVID pandemic, we need to sit down and restructure how we move forward. And how we move forward is through making sure that we have the right technologies. We make sure that the developers who are doing this gated community can complete their projects on time. And we also make sure that there's some incentive. For example, now, what I was going to mention to you that for the next probably three months, most homeowners and most people looking at property may not be able to afford even to put a deposit. So I think that we take that 3 months to start planning is how do we now energize this market going forward. So I think it's a good time. The discussion I'm having with you is the same discussion we are having with our members. How do we unlock this big potential? Because home ownership is not only, as I said, an essential shelter, but it's also an economic livelihood for many people. So then what I mentioned to you earlier, a majority of the people in the market are in the informal sector. People who just sell real estate, maybe they don't have a company, is an entrepreneur, a marketing person. We need to create access for them in terms of information and networking. And that's what KPRI will need to do. So there's a lot of opportunities going forward, even in these challenging times. So let's make sure we continue to partner and work together, both with the government, the private sector, and also the international community. Because they have done it. So let's borrow some of the idea for those who have succeeded in it and adopt some of those structures and policies so that we can move forward.
Yes. All right. So, Mr. Murray, talk to me about your association right now. What do you see? What role do you see it playing, therefore, in the achievement of this affordable housing agenda? And what role do you see it playing critically post the COVID-19 pandemic, therefore, sort of try and turn around the real estate sector in the country through your members?
Thank you. That's a good question. 3 things. Number one, I think we need some new legislative initiatives that opens the market so that there's a level playing field.
Yes.
If you are going to be in real estate, you need to be registered somewhere. You need to have your business registered. I understand the current legislative initiative we have is not working. So we need to relook at it and open this in the market. So that's number one, legislative initiative. The second one is training. And I think that's why KPRI has done a good job. KPRI has partnered with KCA. We do a lot of trainings and workshops. We are now members of NITA, and we've been approved for NITA to do training. So what we're going to be launching in the next 30 days is this online training. And this online training means you don't have to go to a classroom to learn about real estate, to share your ideas, to test your ideas. So training. So I think KPRA as an association can actually do a lot in terms of bringing this. They say knowledge is power, information is power. We want to provide that to our member. The third one is finance, resources, the capital. So we need, for Kenya to be an attractive market, we need to make sure that the financial resources are there. You are talking about mortgage percentage, which you are talking about 9%.
Yes.
We need to increase that through making sure we have access to credit, access to cheaper money. And also we need to introduce some of the things that other countries have done. The purchase money, where you as a homeowner, you can finance me. I don't have to go to a bank. I buy your property and I pay you the payment. Instead of paying the bank 14%, I can pay you 10 or 12%.
Yes.
So there are some great ideas we can adopt that allow us to get more into these homes. So I'm looking, we need to be very creative and also look at technology in terms of also building material. I think in Kenya, everybody thinks doing a house is brick and mortar. But look at other countries. There are many other technologies that have come, innovations that we need to look at innovations. I saw one advertised in Ghana where they actually use soil and they make bricks from soil and they do houses. So others use wood, others use paneling. So if you go to China, they don't use brick and mortar. So we need to relook at how we build our homes. So I think those are just 3, but there are many things we can do. My prayer and my hope is that that this pandemic is gotten under control.
Yes.
And then we're able to go back to normal. Once we do that, I think you will see that we'll bring a lot of ideas. We're talking to the government and the private sector and the financial institutions to create this access for home ownership. And we'll also be doing a training for first-time home buyer. If you've never bought a home, we need to take them step by step. What do you need to do? Because they say knowledge is power. Information is power. So I think I see KPRA more as a conduit for providing this information, both in the national level, but also working with the counties. So I can see us expanding this initiative to work with the governors, and their financial financial team to actually also create this affordable housing and housing construction within the county, so people don't have to move to Nairobi or the Nairobi metropolitan to have a home. There are people in Nakuru, in Mombasa, in Kisumu, in Eldoret, in Nyeri that would want to have a home. Let's make that happen.
Pretty much. Yes. Mr. Waregi.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us at Metropole Television this morning. And I promise we have a lot of issues that we haven't spoken about. I'll be giving you a call from time to time so we can speak on a personal level. All right. Now, take him back to the time that he came into the studio this morning. That is online at Metropole TVKE, on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitter as well. I am @Charles_Kiage. Any questions that you got for him, you know what to do. 20146. That has been your show this morning. My name is Simba Elijah Charles Kiage.